Ultra Labs. Accuracy and speed delivered.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Autocar Professional. My name is Ujal Nair, and first and foremost, I would like to thank the webinar audience for participating and making the April 22nd webinar a grand success. It was a significant date for us because that day we were also commemorating the 50th World Earth Day. It was quite insightful to hear ARI's Rashmi Urdhwashe, Maruti Suzuki, CV Raman, Toyota Kirloskar, Shekhar Vishwanathan, and Hero Electric's Naveen Munjal talk about the challenges and achievements they came across in complying with the new BS6 era. The session saw a unanimous call from the panelists for a new scrappage policy that could kickstart the revival of the industry. I would like the audience to check the link. I would share the link in the chat box later on. So, coming on to today's webinar, the topic for today's webinar is lubricants and operating fluids for BS6 vehicles. Today's webinar is powered by Ultra Labs. I would like to inform our audience that Ultra Labs is a consultant organization for lubricating oil industry and is also a preferred value added service provider for manufacturing of lube oil and specialty products. Now, coming to the Indian lube industry, as per reports, the Indian industrial lubricant market is projected to grow at about $1.67 billion by 2023 with a CAGR of 4.64%. So automotive and transport sector largely dominates the lube industry of India. We at Autocar Professional had reported earlier about global companies like GP Petroleum making investments to the tune of about rupees 100 crore in India. I would later on share the link of this news as well in the chat box. And there's another news report that we had reported about from our special correspondent, Mr. Shakar Abidi, about Kluber Lubricants launching a new lube for EVs, electric vehicles. So without much ado, I would like to introduce our speakers for the webinar today. Our first speaker, Mr. NC Shekaran, the Vice President of Ultra Labs. Shekaran has a long experience in diesel engines, fuels, and lubricants. He has worked for leading companies such as Bosch, HPCL, Valvoline, Chevron Aeronite, and Gulf Oil. Our second speaker is Mr. PJM Khan, the Chief Technology Officer for Ultra Labs. He has a vast domain knowledge in IC engine design, troubleshooting, failure analysis, and manufacturing. He has had a total experience of more than 40 years with Cummins India and Cooper Corporation. On behalf of everyone, I would like to welcome Mr. Khan and Mr. Shekaran. Welcome, sir. Good afternoon and welcome to this episode of Autocar Professional. Khan, sir.
Thank you.
Shekaran, sir. Okay.
Yes.
So welcome to this episode of Autocar Professional. I would request my colleague Avinash to hand over the controls to Shekaran sir so that he could continue with the webinar for today. Shekaran sir, Khan sir, all the best for today's webinar.
Thank you, Ujal. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A great pleasure for me to welcome all of you to this Autocar Professional Seminar. Webinar, and the subject we have chosen for today is lubricants and operating fluids for BS6 vehicles. So basically, this today's discussion is focused on diesel engines because our major challenges are on diesel engines. And in the case of diesel engines, we also know that we have an extra operating fluid today about which we will talk in detail. So in terms of the contents for today's presentation, I'll give a very brief overview about my company, Ultra Group. We will talk a little bit about the leapfrog from BS4 to BS6 that we have just completed. India has just completed the leapfrog. We will get a little insight into after-treatment devices, which are required for the low-emission diesel engine. And then we'll talk about the new generation diesel engine oils. What are the different type of oils and what are its peculiarities, which are required for this BS6 engines. And then I hand over to Mr. Khan, who will talk about the operating fluids, basically the fuels and the diesel emission fluid or ADB. So that is the plan today. So starting with a company overview, we are from the Ultra Group. So there are two operating companies which were started about 1993. Okay, that's quite almost 25 years, more than 25 years ago. And these are Ultra Plus Lubes and West Coast Lubricants and Asphalt Private Limited. We are located just outside near New Bombay, a place called Kamote, just before Panvel. And these entire things are in one premise, in one area. So Ultra Plus Lubes and West Coast Lubricants are basically involved in toll blending, high quality automotive and industrial lubricants, coolants, and so on and so forth for the oil industry. Several customers, we have been doing the toll blending for many years now. And the capacity of this, the combined capacity of these two plants is almost 250,000 liters, 250,000, 64,000 KL per annum. Little later, about 5 years ago, we started Ultra Labs. Now, this started because we were already doing a certain limited amount of testing of used oils for our customers. Then we looked at it and we said there is a need for a professional company to go into the market and help the OEMs, especially the large OEMs. We chose the mining and construction segment predominantly for them to ensure that the engines are working all right. So we started analyzing lubricating oils. Over a period of time, we also developed capabilities to test fuels, AdBlue, and coolants. So today the laboratory is fully NABL approved, including the fuel testing. We also have we also manufacture AdBlue on contract basis. That is an investment that we did a few years ago. And we don't have a brand. In none of these things we have our brand. We toll manufacture for other large oil companies or OEMs. And in that case, we have a VDA approval for the AdBlue. So as far as the lab is concerned, we do about an average of about 3,000 plus samples per month, lubricating oil. And we do a few hundred samples of diesel fuel and AdBlue every month. So that's just a brief introduction. Both Mr. Khan and I and Siddesh, who is our director, we all work for the Ultra Lab. So talking about the subject today, we will start with the leapfrog. So the leapfrog actually originated on 6th of January 2016, about a little more than 4 years ago, when the chief stakeholders, which is the Ministry of Transport, Road Transport and Highways, the minister himself, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, met with other stakeholders in the Petroleum Ministry, the heavy industries, and the Ministry of Environment and Forests. And a decision was made because there was a route map, if you remember, that took us up to BS4. The Mashalkar Committee report was a route map intended to take India from BS1 to BS4. And then there was another route map proposed, and that involved going to BS5 and then BS6. And that was not getting, it was just not getting formalized. So these stakeholders then decided that we need not go through BS5, we can leapfrog directly into BS6. Okay, so that decision was made on 6th of January, which gave us about April 1st, 2020, we had to be compliant. All vehicles, including two-wheelers, three-wheelers, passenger cars, and heavy-duty trucks and buses and LCVs had to be compliant with BS6. So that's given a very, very short time. And during this period, we know that all the oil companies have worked very hard to get the sulfur down to the BS6 level. The OEMs have been very busy, testing various platforms, doing the testing with the new after-treatment devices. So it's been a very hectic time. And it all ended, and we were supposed to go on BS6 as of April 1st. about a month ago, little less than a month ago. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 lock-in situation arrived. So today what is happening is, in the field, we have the fuel is already available in every petrol pump of India. To the best of my knowledge, we have BS6 fuel. The BS6 compliant vehicles are there with the OEMs, but the sales will of course now start after the lock-in situation is eased, or whatever are the new guidelines the government is going to issue shortly about that. Now, just trying to understand what the leapfrog means in terms of some numbers, in terms of the emission, shall we say, the legislation itself. So BS4, go to the next slide. So BS4, basically, if you look at the history of the emission, legislation in India, we started with Euro 1 or BS1 in 2000, and then went on to BS2 and BS3 and BS4, and finally, 20 years later, we have arrived at BS6. So it's taken a 20-year period, and which is really a short time compared to many other developing countries, and even the accepted countries have taken a little more than that. So it's especially the leapfrogging from BS4 to BS6, which is just about 3 years, because the announcement was made in 2016, but BS4 became a national spec only on 2017. So in 3 years, the entire industry, including heavy investment in desulfurization of diesel fuel done by the oil industry, IOC, HPC, and BPC, all the OEMs working together to fit these after treatment devices and get the performances validated, the engines homologated. So that's been a significant investment there. And this now puts us on par with all the advanced countries like North America, like the countries of Europe and Japan, and we are on par with them as far as the shall we say, the emissions are concerned, both on diesel and on petrol. Now, always I'm asked this question: is there a life beyond BS6? Well, it is quite speculative. There is a belief that there could be another specification in the future, which will be probably called Euro 7, and that will be a near zero emission specification, but that's quite speculative, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. Definitely, there is going to be some changes in the current BS6. There will be a requirement to add a new parameter called the particulate number. So apart from particulate matter, which is measured in grams per kilowatt hour and which has to be regulated to 0.01 units, there will be also a new specification for the total number of particulates. Then there will be changes in the OBD, the onboard diagnostic system. It will go from current version to a newer version, and there could also be changes in the driving cycle during this. So there is going to be some life after BS6. Talking about, so how did we get to this BS6? What are the things that the engine manufacturers have basically done? So just looking at the after treatment devices, if you look at the Euro 4 engine, the Euro 4 engine basically, moving on to the Euro 4 engine now, the Euro 4 engine basically had a diesel engine with a heavily turbocharged diesel engine with a charge air cooler. Generally, it was supplied through a high pressure common rail kind of injection system with electronically controlled injectors, because the timing and the sequence of injections are very important here. We had to have low sulfur diesel, okay, and also in some of these cases for the Euro 4, we had deployed retarded timing of injection, which means you inject the diesel fuel a little later in the cycle, thereby we help to reduce the NOx creation. And in some cases, or in many cases, we also were using two-piece pistons, because the engine temperatures are higher now. The piston temperatures have risen because of the higher DMEP and the higher operating conditions. So aluminum was not enough. So we generally had a steel top piston with a aluminum slip. So that was the engine that was generally there available at Euro 3, Euro 4 type of time. Okay, and then what did we do after that? So moving on to EGR, moving on to what is exhaust gas recirculation. So in exhaust gas recirculation, what we do is, it's an effective way of reducing NOx emissions inside the cylinder. You take out a portion of the exhaust and through a control valve, and you generally cool it and put it back into the inlet air stream. before the turbocharger, before the compressor. So what it does is it dilutes the intake air, which is got a certain level of oxygen. And as we know very well that diesel combustion takes place with excess air. So it generally dilutes the air, inlet air. Thereby, it lowers the temperature of the flame when the combustion takes place inside the engine. And by lowering the flame, we are able to get the benefit of the lower formation of oxides of nitrogen. So this was an inexpensive, rather in-cylinder method, not in-cylinder really, out-cylinder, but without any very expensive type of after treatment device, very simple reed valve and an EGR cooler, we were able to achieve this and get to some level of reduction in NOx. But this alone was not enough, because in Euro 4, there were some OEMs who switched over to SCR, and there were some OEMs who remained on EGR, and some people had a combination of both. But moving on, when we get to Euro 6, you have to have other after treatment devices. So the two popular ones that are used today are the SCR, selective catalytic reduction unit, and also the DPF, the diesel particulate filter unit. So in the case of the SCR, as you all know very well, it basically converts the oxides of nitrogen into inert nitrogen and steam, H2O. So that is done by converting the urea. The urea solution is now carried on board. It is called a diesel exhaust fluid, or it's called AdBlue, or it's called OS32. Mr. Khan is going to talk more about that. That gets hydrolyzed, creates chemical reactions inside the SCR, and by which everything is converted to inert nitrogen and H2O. The efficiency of this device is more than 90%. So it is able to, with this and a combination of this, in some cases no EGR, with just SCR, we are able to get the required value of NOx for BS6. Now, also, if you look at the particulates, there is required to be a 50% reduction in particulate matter, so from 0.02 to 0.01. Therefore, we use now a diesel particulate filter, which is a very complex, shall we say, after treatment device, very sensitive, especially sensitive to the oil, the chemistry of the lubricating oil. And this actually is a device in which the soot particles are stored in microcells, and they can be regenerated, and they will burn off and go out as carbon dioxide. So thus greatly reducing the emission of diesel particulate matter. Again, an efficiency of more than 90%, and as I said, very sensitive to lubricant chemistry. So that brings us directly in talking about lubricants, that some of these devices have got sensitivity to lubricants. So we need to understand a little bit about what are the type of lubricants that will satisfy the BS6 engine. Can we use the same old lubricant that we are using for BS4, or do we require to use different? Again, this is a schematic diagram of the BS6 engine. So on the left side, you have got the engine with or without EGR, depending on the manufacturer. And then the exhaust gas goes to a diesel oxidation catalyst, where it is reduced, hydrocarbons and CO are reduced, and then it goes into the DPF, which we just explained. And there the particulates, including soot, are stored for regeneration. Thereafter, it goes into the SCR catalyst, and you are carrying in the urea tank or in the AdBlue tank, you are carrying a solution of urea and water. It is dosed electronically depending upon the OBD. The demand of the dosing pump is regulated to ensure that the NOx in and NOx out are balanced in such a way that we are within the limits. Finally, what you get out of the tailpipe is inert nitrogen, H2O, which is water, but of course at that temperature it will be still steam, and CO2. So CO2 cannot be reduced because that is the final product of combustion of any hydrocarbon, CO2. We must also now remember that there may be some ammonia which is formed in the SCR. So there is actually ammonia strip catalyst at the tailpipe after the SCR, which removes the ammonia. So the exhaust is very, very clean and pure now, and it falls within the requirements of the Bharat 6 specification. Now, talking about the diesel particulate filter, moving on to the diesel particulate filter, what is important is if you remember the formulation of the lubricating oil, engine oil, we have the base oil, then we have the VI improver, which is nothing but a polymer, and then we have a DI package. It's called the detergent inhibitor package, short form DI package. This contributes actually a lot of ash in burning. Now, why does it contribute ash? Because this is the component of the additive which gives you the alkalinity and which also has the detergent. So generally we use, chemistry like calcium phenate, calcium salicylate, calcium sulfonate, whatever. But there is some calcium there, or magnesium, or whatever. Therefore, that tends to leave ash, and that ash will go and deposit in the DPF. And ash cannot be burned off, so it will create a differential pressure across the DPF, and thereby the DPF will go on limb home mode. And limb home mode is a mode in which we have to just limb home and then get the DPF clean. So one of the things that we do here is now reducing the ash. And how do we do that? By reducing the amount of detergent and inhibitor. Because now you must remember that the sulfur is so much reduced in the fuel that the appetite of the engine for alkalinity, the appetite of the engine for TBN is now very much depressed. It has very little acid to neutralize. So we can do with a lower or a re-modified detergent package. There is also actually zinc, which is an anti-wear agent, which also contributes a little bit of ash. So now, therefore, we will move on to what is known as the SAPS, SAPS, which stands for sulfated ash, phosphorus, and sulfur. So there we are. So as I said, detergents tend to leave deposits, and phosphorus has also a tendency to poison the catalyst. So in the SCR, you have a catalyst, and if the phosphorus is not limited, it can poison the catalyst. So the SCR functioning will be affected. Sulfur is now basically coming from the base oil. Sorry, not from the base oil, from the additive, because the base oil is now a good group 2 or a group 3 with extremely low sulfur or no sulfur. The fuel is now only 5 ppm sulfur. So the sulfur is coming from the additive. And the sulfur can create particulates and also deposits in the after treatment devices. Volatility is very important now. Now the volatility is important because the more oil volatilizes, evaporates, it goes and gets burned in the combustion chamber, and that produces its own particulates, its own chemicals, and things like that. So we now have to ensure that we use base stocks which have very depressed level of volatility, and we will look at the specifications in the next slide. So all this together is known as the low SAPS oil, and in the next slide I think we can see the definition of this. So the limits which are applicable for the oils which are required for BS6 engines, which are either CJ4 or CK4. There is also a category called FA4, which we will talk about a little later. So the first one is sulfated ash. The limit is 1% max. Typically today CI4 plus oils are a little above 1. It could be 1, 1.2, depending on the chemistry, and a typical TBN of about 11 to 12, and that's going to come down a little bit. As I explained, the appetite is now reduced for TBN. Phosphorus comes down to 0.12, that's the limit. So typically we are at about 0.14, 0.15 today, it has to come down. Sulfur has to be limited to 0.4 max. And NOAC volatility, which is defined as the evaporation at 250 degrees Celsius for 1 hour, that has to be now limited to 13% for CJ4 and CK4. Now, that is not a big challenge as far as we are using good quality group 2 stocks or group 2, group 3 combinations for 15W40. But if we are going to 10W30 for the benefit of fuel economy or for other reasons, then there will be a challenge, and we will be now forced to select our base stocks very, very, very carefully. So what we are now talking about is that the selection of base oil and lubricant and additive has to be now very judiciously done, so that we create lubricants that chemically will not do any harm to the after treatment device, and volatility has to be controlled. Of course, the oxidation stability and the temperature, thermal ability of the oil, all that has to be superiorly high. Okay, so that's how we select the lubricant. Now, in the next slide, we are just going to take one brief look at off-road, because till now what we talked about was on-road. These are the diesel trucks and diesel buses and the LCVs and the diesel cars which are going to go on the road. But off-road, with the larger engines which are used in mining and construction, and in some cases diesel power generation, right now we have something called the CEV, commercial construction equipment vehicle, or in the case of tractor, it's called TREN. This is the CPCB nomenclature. We are now at stage 3 for both, And next year, the stage 4 will come into effect, 2021. And this has already been sort of published, and this is now, the OEMs have started working on this. So depending on the engine size and depending on the OEM, you might require EGR, or you might require SCR, or you might require both of them. There is also a proposal now to go to the final stage, which is equal to the EPA stage 5 in the US. Now, the proposal is to approach that stage in 2023, which is about 3 years from today. It's only a proposal, has not yet been fully approved. Now, if you go to that stage, then you will require EGR, SCR, and DPF. So, in other words, your off-road construction or mining diesel engine will require the same treatment as you give it to the online trucks today. So let us now understand a little bit about CK4, because in India, I think we have most of the OEMs have sort of taken a decision to bypass CK4 and go to CK4. So let's just look at the evolution of CK4 in a couple of slides to understand what is its peculiarity. So back in 2013, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency of United States, along with the NHTSA, jointly legislated what is known as the GHG clause, which is known as the greenhouse gas clause for the engines which are going to come out in EPA, which are going to come out in 2070. And one of the clause was that you have to reduce your CO2 emissions by enhancing fuel economy. And the OEMs immediately said that, okay, if you want to increase fuel economy, the easiest way to do that is have low viscosity oils. Okay, so at this time, CJ4 was there. Predominantly, CJ4 was a 15W40 vis grade. Typically with a high temperature, high shear viscosity, more than 3.5 in those days. There were also other issues, like we needed a new test for oxidation resistance because the temperatures were going up. So some OEMs were interested in a very, shall we say, a rugged test for oxidation resistance of the oil. There was a need to define shear stability a little better. So we wanted to do 100 passes instead of 30 passes in the same equipment, so that these oils don't shear out. And there was also an issue with the engine that was there in CJ4 for the HUE, HUE hydraulic injectors, which is tested for aeration control of that, and the engine was going out and had to be replaced with a new engine. So with all these things, the API decided to form a new provisional category. It was known as PC11, Provisional Category 11, and work started from 2014. And in 2016, the results of that came out. And of course, one other concern was if you have to go to low temperature, low viscosity oils with a low high temperature, high shear viscosity below 3.5, then how are the wear and engine durability going to be affected? Granted that you will get fuel economy, but are we going to compromise wear and the durability? So that this was the whole, shall we say, platform on which the PC11 was evolved. And from there onwards, you are familiar with some of the tests that are done. And I think we can go to the next slide, which will show us, in the next slide, we can see what are the new engine tests and what are the changes that have happened. So we have a new test called the Volvo T13, which is a very, very, shall we say, rigorous test for testing the oxidation control. It measures viscosity increase over a certain engine running condition. The temperature of the oil has to be maintained at a very high temperature, and you have to pass within a certain limit. The earlier engine, which was used for testing HUE, aeration control of HUE, has been replaced with a CAT C13. The CAT C13 is an assert engine, which is already there as part of the CJ4. And of course, as I told you, in the Kuturban diesel shear stability test, it was defined that you have to stay in grade within after 100 passes. Earlier, it was 30 passes. So at the end of that, the API, for the first time in the history, came out in two categories. One was the successor to CJ4, it was called CK4, K being the alphabet succeeding J, and that would be, passing all these tests like the Volvo T13 and the CAT C13, and also the 100 passes Kuturban shear, but will have the typical viscosity more than 3.5 centipoise in high temperature, high shear viscosity, which is very similar to the current oils we are using today. They're all 3.8 or 4 or whatever. They also came out with a new category called the FA4. Now, F here stands for fuel economy. And being the first category starting with F, it was given it was christened as FA4. So the next one will be FB4, and the 4 stands, of course, for foresight. Now, here it was said that FA4 oil will have to pass all the tests of CK4, including Volvo T13, including CAT C13 and shear stability, but its viscosity will be within a range of 2.9 to 3.2 centipoise, which is the high temperature high shear viscosity, which is measured at 150 degrees Celsius and at the rate of 10 to the power of 6 shears per second. Some of you are familiar with this. So now here is the first time in the history that we have come out with one PC professional category has yielded 2 products at the end of that. Okay, so what we need to understand from this is that the CK4 is an excellent oil. Okay, the CK4 is an excellent oil, and it can easily do the job of lubricating the BS6 engine. We of course need to now understand the reverse compatibility of that. It means that we can use a CK4 or a CJ4 oil in Bharat 4 engines, no problem at all. They are eminently suitable even with a lower TBN, because as I told you, the sulfur level is very low in fuel now, so there is no appetite for the engine to have any alkalinity or any TBN now. So that's okay. But in the reverse direction, the best performing oils of today, CI4 and CI4 plus, cannot be used in a BS6 engine with a DPF, because they can cause serious damage and in short time to the DPF. What is also clear from this is that in the future, because now we are actually on the highways, we are now at a level called the level 1, which now will become the level 2 next year. Level 2 fuel economy. Okay, on passenger cars there is already a legislation, but this has already been promoted and it's been, shall we say, accepted. So next year we are likely to see one new fuel economy legislation which will come into effect next year for diesel trucks and diesel buses, where we might then have to think about using products like FA4. So there is also a possibility that the 15W40 over a period of time might migrate to 10W30, and in the future the 10W30 itself might migrate from a higher HTHS, normal HTHS product, to a lower HTHS product for the sake of fuel economy. Now, having said that, before I hand over to Mr. Khan for the remaining topics, I must say that a lot of work has been done in the last 4 years. Unfortunately, the COVID situation has hit us at a time when the equipment was going to be launched, and we would have got some first-hand experience with these new quality fuels and new quality lubricants and the new quality fluids. But that is getting delayed now. Although a lot of work is done, and we have been participating with some of the OEMs and some of our customers in some of these activities. So we do get, for example, we did a fuel study recently. Mr. Khan will talk to you about that. But there is much more to be done. And in terms of validating the performance of these new fluids, the AdBlue, the new CK4 or CJ4 lubricant, in combination with the new engine, in combination with the new fuel, in combination with the new after-treatment devices, I think much more work is done. It remains to be done during the next 1 year and more. And we, as a responsible partner to the oil industry, with tremendous testing capability, both in the lab and in the field, would like to offer our services. Please do, talk to us if we can work together on any of these projects, because they are of great interest to us. Before concluding, I must also say that this has brought India on par with the rest of the world. In fact, we are far ahead of many other countries in the world. And this is not done just because we can just say that. There has been, a negative effect due to air quality. A lot of studies and surveys have been published. I don't want to get into detail on that. With this, we can expect that the air will, there needs to be a scrappage policy for old vehicles, which I'm sure will follow in the future. With that, we can definitely see that the emissions will reduce over a period of time, and the air will become much more better, and the life of people in this country will definitely benefit for all the investment that's done. So that was all I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Mr. PGM Khan, who will talk about fuels and other operating fluids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sekharan. A formal good afternoon to everybody who is participating in this, including the organizers. Thanks for sparing your time. Now we will talk about the fuels for BS6 vehicles, engines. as Mr. Sekran has well explained about the what's going to be the scenario in terms of BS6. So one of the inputs for those engines to control the emissions is the diesel, which is to be controlled properly to meet those emission requirements, which is very essential for our country to control the emissions. As responsible citizens of the country, I mean, we should all encourage this move, shifting over from BS4 to BS6 for the diesel fuel. We have listed out here the specifications of the diesel fuel BS6 versus BS4 versus BS6, and most of the test methods and tests are similar to both BS4 and BS6, except one is density is slightly reduced. You can see in this, it's been reduced from 0.815 to 0.810 for the lower limit. And the main change is about the sulfur content, as Mr. Sekran is rightly explained about it, and it was 50 ppm sulfur, and now it is 10 ppm for BS6 fuel. And this fuel is available across the country, barring a few locations in Northeast. It's going to take some time for the oil companies to supply that fuel to those locations. Going forward on this now, the as main difference is in sulfur content, as I explained you already. From 50 ppm, it is reduced to 10 ppm, which is a good move for better environment. Effective date of this change is 1st April 2020. That's what has been communicated to all the concerned people, and also it's been implemented. With this COVID-19 issue, due to the lockdown and all, certain parts of the country may not have received this fuel, BS6 fuel, maybe in the channel. But as far as implementation date is concerned, it is 1st April 2020. So what we did was proactively, as Ultralab being one of the player here for testing of the fuels. So along with couple of engine and equipment manufacturers or vehicle manufacturers, we collected the samples from different locations of western part of the country and tested in the lab to know whether exactly the sulfur content has reduced or not. So one good thing in encouraging finding is that all those samples are meeting the 10 ppm sulfur content specs. What actually we found the sulfur content was between 5 to 7 ppm. It's a very good news in terms of controlling the sulfur content in the fuel. So now when the fuel sulfur content is reduced, it is going to impact the lubricity of the property of the fuel. Lubricity property of the fuel is very important in terms of controlling the wear and tear of the components in the fuel system. As the fuel system also migrated to high pressure fuel systems, the component clearances are reduced to achieve that high pressure. So lubricity plays a role in terms of minimizing the wear of these components so that the clearances are maintained and the high pressure is achieved, which is required for controlling the emissions in those particular engines. So it has also been looked into that the refineries have been asked to ensure the lubricity property of the diesel fuel of BS6 by using the HFRR test. HFRR is high frequency reciprocating rig, which is a very sophisticated rig in evaluating the lubricity of the diesel fuel. So it's all encouraging news. We'll be going ahead with this. Let's hope that the emission levels will be reduced and we will be in a cleaner atmosphere. The next input for the diesel engine in terms of controlling the emissions is DEF, diesel exhaust fluid, which is AUS 32 aqueous urea solution, and its name is AdBlue. AdBlue is being given by the original introducers of this diesel exhaust fluid, and by using this in the SCCR as mentioned by Mr. Sekharan in the previous presentation, that this is going to play a major role in controlling the emissions. So AUS 32 or DEF or AdBlue is a solution of 32% high purity industrial grade urea. It's the industrial grade, not agricultural grade, and 67.5% of water, which is a very low in inorganic, organic, or colloidal contaminants produced by single distillation. The water is produced either by deionization, by ultrafiltration, or by reverse osmosis process. Any of these processes are used for producing this water, which is required for preparing the AdBlue. And Alta Lab has got a facility to produce the AdBlue in the existing facility. DEF is a commonly used industry abbreviation for AUS 32. Actually, AdBlue is a trademark, as I mentioned. It is a trademark from the Association of German Automotive Industry, VDA. It is also marketing term for diesel exhaust fluid, the use which requires licensing from VDA, being it is being patented. So it has to be license has to be obtained from the VDA to manufacture AdBlue. Okay, coming to this urea, which is ingredient in the AdBlue. Urea is a nitrogen compound which with many commercial uses like fertilizers, animal feed, supplement production of additives and resins. We are not bothered about that. What we are bothered about is industrial grade urea, which is required for SCR system. It is highly purified from urea, manufactured specially in certain fertilizer plants in the world, not many of them. So that's why still it is imported into the country. The high purity of industrial grade urea is intended to protect the catalyst of SCR system to provide a high conversion of NOx, which is essential for controlling the emissions. So the point here is that the SCR system requires industrial grade urea, but this has been imported now as on. So there are very few players apart from Ultra Labs who are manufacturing this. We have listed out here certain of the parameters which are to be ensured while preparing the AdBlue, which is very important in terms of controlling the exhaust emissions. So these are tested in our lab, and also make sure that whenever the urea is imported, it meets the requirements of as per these parameters. It also meets the ISO 22241-1 2019 version. So this is one of the references for the urea. So now there are a couple of doubts raised by people across the country that what is the shelf life of the AdBlue during the storage, and it is being linked up with the temperature where it is stored, and if the storage temperature is less than or equal to 10 degrees Celsius, it can be stored up to 36 months, and accordingly if it is 25 degrees it is 18 months, and if it is 30 degrees it's 12 months, it's 35 degrees 6 months. Above 35 degrees, significant loss of shelf life, check every batch before use. This is a recommendation from Ultra Lab for the users before using or before taking the AdBlue for use in that particular vehicle. It is always better to check the shelf life to make sure that it is meeting the requirements. So we also have the facility to check the AdBlue properties, and some of the consumers are taking advantage of it and they are getting it checked. Now we have completed all the three inputs for the BS6 engines, required diesel fuel, then your lubricating oil, which Mr. Sekran has well explained about during his presentation, and also the DEF or AdBlue. Now we encourage you to ask any questions or queries, any doubts. We will be glad to clarify them in this session. If
Thank you.
you want to contact us and ask few things or ask few doubts, you can use the contact numbers and email addresses given in the contact details of this slide, and we'll be happy to clarify those.
Thank you, Khan. Thank you, Khan sir. Thank you, Shekharan sir. That was quite an, I must say, quite a detailed insight into the whole BS6 ecosystem. So, Shekharan sir, Khan sir, shall I go for the questions first?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah. So we have come across a lot of questions from our audience.
Yeah.
And for the audience, I'll notify it right away that I'll be taking out only a few selected ones because I can see there are almost more than 100 questions lined up here. So I won't be able to take all of them. I'll be taking a few selected ones. For those whose questions have not taken up, please do contact Mr. Siddesh Sawan or NC Shekharan or PGM Khan. Their contact details have been notified here. Right. So without
Ujal,
much ado, yes, sir.
Just sorry to interrupt you. I'm just saying that those questions which cannot be answered now because of lack of time, if you have the email ID or the telephone number of the person, please pass it over to us and we'll do our best in the next few days to answer them. Okay? If you can, if it is possible.
We'll have to
if
check
it is
on
not
that.
Possible,
because,
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
fine,
because
fine,
we keep audience members anonymous. We try to
all right.
keep
No
the
problem.
audience members anonymous.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay, but still,
we can answer you. We can answer those questions to you. Then you can pass on that to the concerned audience.
Yeah. So I'll go with the first question now.
Right.
So the first question: while opting for low viscosity oil, is it required to change the lubrication pump characteristics? This is like a basic one now. Who would like to take this question? Shekharan sir.
I can take it. I can take it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take it, Shekharan. No, I don't think we need to change the lubricating oil pump because the viscosity difference we are talking about is not that such a huge difference. In fact, in many countries, the diesel engines already use 10W30, and in some countries, in some of the Scandinavian countries and so on and so forth, they already use a 5W30. So there is no great after fitment or refitment required for that. The same pump, the same system can take it. No problem.
Yeah, to add to that, probably there may be slight reduction in the lubricating oil pressures of those engines, but that will not be a big issue at all.
Right.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. We'll go for the next one. What is the difference between EGR requirements and limitations for petrol and diesel engines?
What is the what is the
EGR requirement? What is the difference between the EGR requirement, requirements and limitations for the petrol and diesel engines?
Well, I'm not very clear about the question, but if I understand you correctly, it's saying that both petrol engines and diesel engines both have EGR. So, is there any difference between the two? If that is the question, yes.
Right.
See, the amount of oxides of nitrogen that are generated in a gasoline engine are not very high. On the other hand, we get a much higher NOx generation in the diesel engine. So EGR is much more of a today. If you look at it, EGR is much more of a diesel phenomenon than a gasoline phenomenon. Although the Japanese, if you look at the original Japanese gasoline engines, many of them had light amount of EGR. Today, in a truck engine, if you're talking about a 12 liter or a 10 liter, 500 horsepower type of American or European truck engine, the EGR levels have gone to that level that you are putting in sometimes 30 to 40% volumetrically as EGR. So if your compressor has got 60% fresh air coming from the through the filter, and the remaining 40 or even 30 to 40% is EGR. That much amount of EGR is now put in, and this is not possible to regulate it manually. So the onboard computer and the OBD, it regulates the EGR. So it is quite big, quite voluminous. In the case of a diesel engine, we have to cool the EGR because it's quite hot, and there are ill effects of EGR in a diesel engine crankcase because you are bringing some acidity back, you are bringing some soot back, you're also bringing some oxidized products back into the oil. So therefore, the oil now needs to withstand a little higher temperature. It needs to withstand better cleanliness, and little more neutralization potential is required. So it's much more of a diesel phenomenon today. I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Next one. Next question is, 10W30 has, okay, this is just a part of the question. 10W30 has better fuel economy compared to 20W40, but higher wear and tear due to low viscosity. How is this taken care of?
This is exactly what the industry is discussing for the last 2 to 3 years. How can we balance the engine wear, especially the bearing wear, with gains in fuel economy? So one of the things that is happening is now the design of the bearing itself is now undergoing big changes. Okay, I'm not an expert to talk about that, but the bearings are today designed to handle thinner fluids. Okay, you have got, if you look at the passenger cars, to give a very good example, 5 years ago, all passenger cars in this country were using 20W40, very rarely 10W30 or even 15W40 engine oils. Today, every single passenger car, including Maruti, uses a 5W30 or a 0W30. There has been changes in the bearing. Now, that is because there is a new legislation that what the Bureau of Environment, the Ministry of Environment has brought in through BEE. So there are 2 stages. We are in the first stage, and there is a fine that the OEM will have to pay if he does not get a corporate average fuel economy. Okay, so we have switched over to that. So the concern is real, but the OEMs are now redesigning and recooking their bearing structure and construction and different methods of shall we say bearing construction to handle this lighter viscosity oil, so we can take the benefit of the oil consumption, fuel consumption, without affecting the durability of the engine. Now, you must understand this is directly related to CO2 emissions, and this is directly related to global warming and climate change. We, as a signatory, our country is a signatory to the Paris Accord on climate change. We have agreed to reduce our CO2 emissions, and in a small way, the CO2 emissions from the vehicle will reduce per kilometer. If you look at it, it will reduce by using a thinner oil. So the effort is on, and there is enough studies are being done on that. I hope I've answered.
Okay.
In addition to that, the additive package is supposed to take care of this factor also. And of course, the oils goes through the Indian testing for qualifications. There, the testing is very aggressive. I mean, very abusive type of testing which is done to qualify the oils. The wear part is already taken care, like HTHS and all that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'll go for the next one. This is a 2-part question from 2 people. Since these are popular ones, I'll just combine both of them together.
Yeah.
So, what will be the fuel efficiency by using BS6 fuels, and what will happen if BS4 compliant lubricant are used in BS4 engines? That is, BS6 compliant lubricants are used in BS4 engines, and what will be the fuel efficiency gained using BS6 fuels?
Okay, so what I'll do is the fuel efficiency difference between BS6 and BS4, I will pass on to Mr. Khan, who is a much knowledgeable diesel engineer than I am. On the first part, what will happen if a BS6 lubricant like a CJ4 or a CK4 is used in an old BS4 engine? What will happen? There has been some studies done. In fact, I can tell you that we work very closely with OEMs sometimes in evaluating stuff like this, and one of the projects that we did with an OEM was to look at the reverse compatibility of a CK4 product in older engines. So we ran this test in a field test, also on the dynamometer first, and then the field test. We used the BS6 lubricant, which is a CK4 in that particular case. The CK4 oil was used in a BS4 engine, okay, and over so many lakhs of kilometers and stuff like that. The results were quite good. The older engines really like this lubricant. There are no problems at all, and that is what the API also had been telling us. That is what the additive companies and oil companies also have been telling us. But these oils are really good. They have no negative performance as far as the older engines are concerned. In fact, personally, I would like to hazard a guess that in older engines they might be able to give you a little longer drain period than the CI4 and the CI4 plus type of oils. So that is one part I've answered. Other part regarding improvement in fuel economy, Khansa, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Regarding fuel economy, and this is again a controversial thing which is discussed across the industry when it is changed, when the fuel is changed from BS4 to BS6 and also oils are changed. As far as I know, there won't be much difference, but there can be a little bit of sacrifice one has to do to control the emissions as per the requirement, because the NOx is going to make the difference in terms of the fuel economy. But as the engine manufacturers or the engine designers have got a big challenge not to sacrifice any fuel economy with changing over to BS6 fuel and also changing over to the suitable oils for that. So some of them are already achieved that and claiming into the market that there is no difference in the fuel economy.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir. I'll quickly go to the next question here. Next question is, what would be the ATDs, the anthropomorphic test devices for passenger cars and two-wheelers? What would be the ATDs for passenger cars and two-wheelers?
Okay, this is the after treatment devices you're talking about? ATDs after treatment devices.
Yes.
It could be that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
okay. So, firstly, this seminar is focused on diesel engines. So, I have not covered that in detail. But as far as the gasoline passenger car is concerned, the diesel passenger car will have to use similar type of after treatment devices. It may have to use SCR. It will definitely have to use a DPF and so on and so forth. For the gasoline currently type of cars, which are port fuel injected and normal non-turbocharged type of cars, there will be some small changes in the three-way catalyst that we are using today. That will be that's the only thing that is required. I don't think there will be any major changes also in the two-wheeler except a two-way catalyst. But when you are going to get to the next phase of gasoline engines, where what is known as gasoline direct injection (GDI), which is now something that is happening all over the world, within a small volume of engine volume, it is able to give you much higher power and also give you much higher fuel economy, where the gasoline is directly injected. So that combines with turbocharging. So turbocharged GDI, TC GDI is one of the methods which a lot of countries have now evolved their technology in gasoline engines, at which time the combustion is now more like a diesel engine. You will get particulates and then you will have to use a DPF in most cases. It's called a GPF. It's called a gasoline particulate filter. Also, the oil will be very, very particular because there are things like, low speed pre-ignition, LSPI. That is a very peculiar phenomenon for those type of gasoline engines. So the chemistry of the additive is impacted, and you will have to use special quality lubricants. I hope I've answered the question.
Okay, sir. Okay. And will there be, let's say, from broad perspective, will there be any change in the after treatment devices for petrol engine?
No, as I said, it is only a three-way catalyst that you'll be using for current engines. But when you go to GDI, when you go to TC GDI, turbocharged gasoline diesel injection, gasoline direct injection, then you will have to use a DPF. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
A GPF is called a gasoline particulate filter. I'm sorry.
Okay. Quickly, the next question. Yeah. What would be the increase in percentage of lubricant which may convert into ash in engine from BS4 to BS6 technology? What would be the increase in percentage of lubricant which may convert into ash in engine from BS4 to BS6 technology? And also, I can add this one question also. Can we continue using present API SM grade oil for BS6 bikes?
Okay, so I'll take the first question first. Firstly, the question is standing upside down. the amount of ash in a CK4 or a CJ4 oil is much less than the amount of ash in a CI4 oil. So for a BS6 engine, less ash is generated. How do we do that? By controlling the SAPs. We have a lower sulfated ash, which is typically today's oils are about 1.2 to 1.4 maybe sulfated ash. We have to limit that to 1% ash, and that is the limit of that. Gives you an indication of how much lower the ash is. Okay, so the question has not been correctly stated. For a BS6 engine, much less ash is generated as compared to a normal SAPs oil of a BS4 engine. Second question is regarding, sorry, can you just refresh my memory on that, please? The second question? What was the second question? Sorry.
So can we use the present API SN grade oil for the BS6 bikes?
Well, that is not a topic I'm very familiar on, but I think you can use it, but I will not be able to answer that question very definitely. Today's entire topic was based on diesel vehicles, after treatment devices and lubricant for diesel. I think I will probably have to decline to give an answer to that, but we'll try to get you an answer later, and if you can send me an email, I will try to get you a good answer to that. Sorry about that.
Perfect. Okay, sir. No issue. Okay. So next question, quickly the next question. What is the difference between the test Volvo T13 and ASTM D8048? And what is the difference between CAT C13 and ASTM D7549? The Volvo T13 and ASTM.
Okay, so this person who has asked this question is quite familiar with ASTM. I have got a problem that I am not very familiar. But let me tell you that the Volvo T13 test is nothing but the Mack T12 test. Now, Mack is now owned by Volvo, so they have christened the test as Volvo T13, but with very different running conditions. It's heavily overfueled. The temperature of the oil is kept very elevated, and then you are looking at the viscosity increase during the end of the last 50 hours of the test or something like that. And so the thermo-oxidative stability of the oil is what is under test. Now, I'm sorry, I will have to go back and refer what the ASTM test is. If the ASTM test is similar, then it will be the same. I am not that knowledgeable about testing that I can remember the ASTM numbers. I apologize for that. And the C13 is basically an aeration test. It's a simple test where the hydraulically actuated, electronically controlled unity injectors, which are there in some of the truck engines. Caterpillar has got some of those type of injectors. Earlier Navistar had that. Earlier test was based on a Navistar engine. Navistar is no more a player in the market. Therefore, that engine has changed to an Assert engine of Caterpillar. It's a C13. It's a simple aeration test to ensure that aeration does not happen beyond a certain limit in the hydraulic oil, which actually pushes the injector down. In the injector, the needle is pushed down with hydraulic pressure. So to ensure that the uniform injection takes place, you require that. So that's a test. I do not remember the ASTM number.
Okay. No issue, sir. I'll just tell you the name of the person who asked this question.
Yeah.
I got the name of the person, Dr. Rajiv Shuri. I don't know if you know this person. He might be familiar to you. That's why he might have put that question.
Sorry, I'm not able to. Well, please get in touch with me, Dr. Rajesh. Please get in touch with me. We'll talk about this.
Yeah.
I have the ASTM number somewhere. I'll have to just dig it up. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the question, anyway.
So we'll go for the last two questions now. It's regarding Ultralabs. Actually, I think Shekharan sir, you can answer this question more properly. What is your outlook for the Indian lube industry when the number of EVs rises, especially in the two-wheeler segment? So this is in regards to the EV, electric mobility.
Okay. Yeah, right. So again, I am not an expert in electric mobility. Like all of you, I read articles, I attend seminars. I know that electric mobility is something which should not be ignored. It is definitely going to be very important to us in terms of emissions, carbon dioxide emission, especially climate change and all that. So there is going to be an impact. And as you correctly have asked the question, the impact will be on the three-wheeler and the two-wheeler initially, and then later on passenger cars, and finally and ultimately maybe diesel engines. So there is going to be an impact. But I think it is very difficult to right now sit and say what will be the real impact of the electric mobility, by what percentage or by what day, how much of diesel or gasoline fuel will be saved because of electric alternative. Very difficult to say that. You must also remember, in the last 1 month, we have learned a very big lesson. We have learned a very big lesson that the crude oil price can come down to almost $20. And the particular day, the oil producers were paying money to the agents to take away the oil. Okay, so there are unexpected, shall we say? Well, literally, yes, they were. It was a minus. The margin was minus. So you literally have to pay if the deal went through.
It's gone to the negative price.
No, minus 3.7. Yeah. So we are going through a trough. A trough where such things have never been anticipated. This is the first time the entire global economy and our own economy is trying to come to grips with what is going to happen in the future. So I will not be surprised if there is going to be a minor shakeout also in this equation between electric and fossil fuel based mobility. I'm just hazarding a guess here, because if the diesel fuel and the gasoline fuel becomes cheaper due to some reason, then the electric mobility will be impacted. But what is ultimately going to promote electric mobility will be the fact that if you can generate all your power, the power you require for electric mobility, if it can be generated from renewable sources of energy like wind and solar, then you are winning the emission game. By using power which is generated from a coal-fired turbine or from a diesel-powered, oil-fired, turbine, you are not going to get any benefit, in the carbon intensity. Carbon intensity is still the same. So that is what is the bigger equation, that the unconventional renewable sources of energy should be built up to such an extent that they can support the power demand of electric mobility. Okay, and then of course the second issue will be the cost of a good battery, a long-range battery, and whether such a battery can be, technology is available, whether it can be built. I think these are the two factors which will probably spell the boom of electric mobility in the future. Thank you.
Perfect, sir. Perfect. This The next question is directed toward Pijan Khan. Khan sir, this question seems to be directed towards you.
Yes.
It's about what is the difference, the core difference between the coolant of an EV and an IC vehicle. So it seems to be a reference to the new EVs like the Volvo trucks and the new Toyota and the Nissan ones, where they have higher battery density, and for with better or more complex battery management system, they require some liquid cooling technology there. So they want to know what is the core difference between the coolant of an EV and an IC vehicle.
Difference between the coolant of the IC and EV engine. I'm not very familiar with the EV engine coolant which is used. I'm not even aware of that. The EV engine requires a coolant, but IC engine definitely, because the heat has to be taken out. But I'm sorry for that. I'm not aware of that.
Oh, okay. No issue, sir. No issue. All right. I think the next question, this is the last question. We can take this as the last question. The last question again, sir, for Khan sir. Does the Indian industry have the capacity and the capability to manufacture OS32 or DEF indigenously on a large scale? That is really high quality ones in India itself.
Yes. Definitely.
How do we do that?
And Ultra Lab has already taken lead to manufacture the AdBlue and supplying to various users, and we are capable to supply as per the demand. So there is no problem. There are a couple of other players also who are in the market and they are supplying the AdBlue. As this is going to be new thing coming up into the market, and people are getting geared up to manufacture more and more volumes of AdBlue.
Okay, sir.
Ujjwal, I want to make one small comment on that question. Khan Sahib is absolutely right. There is no problem at all in thinking about completely indigenous manufacturing of this product. Just look at some numbers. So last year, approximately we consumed 100 million tons of diesel. 100 million tons of diesel was consumed last year. Let's assume about 60 or 70% of that was on the highway. Okay, that is vehicles, not all. So 60, 70 million tons of diesel was consumed in transportation primarily. And all those vehicles will now in the future become Euro 6. So suppose the demand remained like that for the next 5 years and the scrappage policy evolved so that after 5 years, every vehicle is Euro 6. Then you can imagine that 70 million ton diesel is equal to 70 into 4%. So how much is that? 2.8 to 3 million tons of AdBlue. Now, when you
Yeah,
reach that kind of level, industrial grade urea will be manufactured by one of the fertilizer plants in this country. Definitely. Today, nobody is making it because the demand is not so high. And to make a separate batch, and keep it aside will be a headache for them. So we resort to importing from the eastern side, from China or from, SABIC and so on and so forth. But as the Euro 6 becomes more popular and more vehicles come on the road, definitely there is no big technology involved in this. You have to have good quality water, which is there in this country. We have to make the urea, which we make in plenty. We make a different grade, but we'll have to make a industrial grade. So I don't think it's a huge challenge at all.
Oh, okay. That's
Thank you.
good to know that India can go for at least I can say export in the near future of urea, right? We can reach that
Yeah,
level.
we can if required. Yes, we can. Capabilities are there. Yes.
Capabilities are there, right?
Yeah.
So thank you. That's all the question from my side. For the audience, if I have not taken up your question, it's purely because of lack of time. Please bear with us. We have the contact details of Mr. Shekaran and Khan sir here on the screen here. Please feel free to contact them and place your queries. You can mail them. Please mail them. And for
Before
the
we
webinar
close,
today,
sorry, before we
yes,
close,
sir.
I want to convey my shukriyas to Mr. Sumantra Barua, who has sent me the wishes for Ramadan. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
happy
it's in the
Ramadan,
chat
sir.
box.
Happy Ramadan.
Oh, it's in the chat box. I just read it.
Oh, okay. Great. So, yeah, thank you for such a, what I can say, I'll say it again, detailed insight into the whole BS6 ecosystem, the whole compliance measures, factors that factor in here. And that was quite insightful about, we saw the whole So we saw the whole transition from BS1 to the current BS6 in 2020. Shekaran sir also showed us the after treatment devices for BS6 diesel engines. Then he explained the emission norms for off-road vehicles in India. That is, in 2021, we are going to have the TREM stage 4. Right, sir? We are going to have the TREM stage 4. And we learned about the greenhouse gas clause, a joint initiative by the EPA and the NHTSA. We saw the evolution of API CK4, some new tests for oxidation control, aeration control, increased severity for shear stability, new limits for HTHS viscosity. Khan sir explained to us the comparison of the BS4 and the BS6 fuel specs, about the major role of OS32 or DEF in DEF in the whole BS4, BS6 compliance process, the role of urea, the shelf life of the AdBlue according to the storage temperature. So all in all, I would say it was very informative for our audience. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Sumantra, sir, yeah, would you like to add some? Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself to acknowledge the thanks of Mr. Khan. Thank you very much, and wish you once again. And indeed, thank you very much for two very insightful and informative presentations in their own right. I'm sure our attendees benefited a lot from them. That includes me too. And some of it was a little too technical for me, but I can always engage with you later and learn. And for example, I wasn't aware about the ambient temperature's influence on the shelf life of the AdBlue. I'm sure even in a country like India, where ambient temperature varies significantly from one part of the country to another part, I'm sure manufacturers and even partners like Ultra Labs will devise new technologies to take care of that. So thank you very much once again, and thank you very much, Mr. Samant, also for sharing the presentations, and to all attendees once again, thank you very much. And those of you who are commemorating this holy month of Ramadan, best wishes to each one of you. So once again, thanks for your participation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Before we wind up, I just want to notify one short announcement here. I would like to announce that we are going to have another webinar on 30th April. I'm not going to reveal the topic, but I would just say that it is absolutely must for all the electric mobility enthusiasts. It's going to focus on the electric vehicles and the electric mobility sector. So please do log in. Please do register first through our website www.autocarpro.in. The webinar will be on 30th April. So this is Ujal Nair with Avinash Bhakre from Autocar Professional signing off. Thank you, Nasser. Thank you, Nasser sir. Thank you, Sudhanva. Thank you, Sumantra sir. Thank you. Stay for everyone. Stay safe. Take care.